That state's witness will also testify that Marquise Conway was one of the individuals responsible for a portion of that payment.
Dallas hip-hop has always had its problems, but when MO3 was taken out on I-35 in broad daylight, the city froze. Nobody thought the aftermath would twist into something this wild. Now, 5 years later, prosecutors are claiming that Yella Beezy pulled out $100,000 in straight cash just days after the hit, and the bank cameras supposedly got every second of it. This whole situation has turned into one of the most chaotic street stories Dallas has ever seen. We're diving into everything. This is the breakdown of how a rap rivalry didn't just stay in the booth but spilled into the streets with deadly consequences. That Wednesday in November 2020, the Dallas sun was burning hot overhead, traffic jammed on I-35E like any normal midday. Folks were clocking hours, truckers were hauling loads, and everyday people were just grinding through another day. But what happened next turned the whole city upside down. Those few minutes of confusion, gunfire, and panic kicked off a chain reaction that would haunt Dallas for the next 5 years. This is the raw, unfiltered story of how two heavy hitters from the city went from dropping tracks to dropping threats, until one was left stretched on the freeway, and the other found himself staring down. Murder for hire accusations that could lock a man away for life. This situation wasn't just music drama, it was real life turning deadly. But to understand how things blew up into straight freeway chaos, we gotta rewind. These types of hood fallouts never come out of thin air. 9 times out of 10, the spark starts tiny, a comment, a song, a disagreement. And the pride, pressure, and pain behind it make it explode into something nobody can take back. So let's run it back and look at how this whole thing really formed. We need to dive into the past of these two artists, their blocks, their choices, and the street codes that shaped how they moved. Because this wasn't just rap beef, this was ambition mixed with loyalty. It's mixed with ego, mixed with street reality, and when those ingredients mix wrong, the results can turn fatal real quick. Yella Beezy government named Marquise DeAndre Conway came straight out of Oak Cliff, Dallas, a neighborhood that stands on strength but carries scars deep as concrete. It's a place full of real ones who push through daily battles just to keep moving, raised in the early 90s. Conway was surrounded by that gritty southern sound echoing from corner stores, barbershops, and every whip cruising by. But even that couldn't drown out the pain he had to face early on. When Conway was just 12, his entire world shattered. His pops was taken out inside their own home on Mother's Day. That's the type of loss that don't just hurt, it hardens you, forces you to grow up fast, teaches you that nowhere is safe, and leaves you with questions that don't ever get answered. Anyone who survives something like that walks different, thinks different, feels different. Music became the only space where he could breathe. By 9 years old, he was already scribbling his own rhymes, turning emotions too heavy to talk about into lines that helped him cope. It wasn't for clout, it wasn't to impress anybody, it was survival. It was a young kid trying to stay sane while life kept throwing punches. As Conway hit his late teens and early 20s, those private notebooks turned into something real. He started sliding into Dallas's underground with intention, sharpening his craft and building his name. That's when the moniker Yella Beezy stuck, partly because of his complexion, partly because he was buzzing heavy around the city.
I mean, you came out with these tracking designer records, and what's the latest one that's out right now that's going crazy?
That's on me.
That's on me going crazy. What, like 500,000? What, like a month?
Nah, shit. Right now it says 700,000.
7.
Every year he leveled up, every track got cleaner, and every move he made hinted that he was trying to climb out of the trenches for good. But the higher he rose, the more dangerous the game got. Yella Beezy's come up had that wild, energetic flow that grabbed people instantly. His early tapes carried that raw Texas trap aura, the kind that made anyone from the trenches feel like he was speaking straight from their block. When he dropped joints that blended catchy hooks with those unfiltered street memories, his buzz went from local noise to something the whole city felt. Trap and Designer wasn't just a track, it became a full-blown Dallas anthem, blasting through clubs, backyards, and block kickbacks, with folks spitting every bar before they even realized the song lived in their heads. That wave landed him right on the radar of Hiko Entertainment, a label started by iconic exec, La Reed. And that move officially pushed Yella Beezy into the big leagues, where the checks get fatter and the pressure hits harder. From there, his rise didn't slow down for a second. He kept dropping heaters that hit the national charts, dominating airwaves way outside of Texas. That's On Me turned into a cultural moment, showing the world he could craft bass-heavy tracks that felt real enough for the streets, but catchy enough for the mainstream. It was the perfect double threat. Major features came fast. Chris Brown on Restroom Occupied, Lil Wayne on Hit, Gucci Mane on Back at It Again. Each one lifted his profile higher and proved he wasn't just another regional name. He was entering the national conversation. Yella even admitted during an interview that his breakout single performed way beyond anything he imagined. Success didn't just knock for him, it kicked the door open. But let's keep it real, the climb wasn't clean. Yella's evolution from a nervous underground kid to a confident industry figure came with problems attached. Drama always seemed to follow him, tied to the exact same Dallas streets that shaped his voice. Legal issues, gun cases, and the constant pressure of survival made him look like a product of the environment he grew up in. A world where the way you move can be misunderstood by anybody who's never lived that lifestyle. Now let's shift to the other side of Dallas, North Dallas, where another artist was building something powerful. MO3, born Melvin Abdul Noble Jr. First opened his eyes in McKinney, but grew into himself in North Dallas. Carving out a path that shared similarities with Yella Beezy's story, but carried its own deep emotional weight. Born in spring 1992, MO3 was raised in a home where faith was the foundation. He grew up involved with Greater Hope Holiness Church, staying active and close to his family. North Dallas, with all its beauty, pain, possibility, and pressure, turned him into someone who didn't hide what he felt. He used his music like a diary, turning trauma, heartbreak, and frustration into raw confessions that felt more like testimonies than entertainment. He was heavily influenced by Boosie, someone whose unfiltered approach to street life and prison experiences hit him deep. That honesty shaped MO3's sound.
When Yella Beezy got shot up, what were your thoughts about that?
I gotta stay out the way.
Okay.
Out here, shit. Getting hit up every day. Out here, like.
His early work blended melodic harmonies with real-life storytelling that didn't sugarcoat anything. When he dropped his 2014 mixtape Shot As Everything Changed, that project spread across Dallas fast, building a loyal grassroots following that connected with his authenticity. No fake hype, no pretending, just truth laid over beats that carried scars and soul. MO3's rise wasn't forced, wasn't manufactured. It was straight organic.
Well, after we did the interview with you, I interviewed MO3.
Who?
MO3.
I don't know who that is.
Okay. Well, I asked about the shooting, and he said there's no beef, but he said you just gotta stay out the way. It's real out here.
Word of mouth, packed local shows, and that raw emotional delivery had crowds standing still like they were listening to someone pour their whole soul out on stage.
Yeah, nah, they was misinformed about some rap beef, and I was like, nah, I ain't got no rap beef with nobody. I ain't got no rap beef with no rap in my city. No rap beef.
His breakthrough moment came when he caught Boosie's attention, leading to a legit label deal and a mentorship that pushed his name way beyond Dallas. Their joint project, Bada's MO3, became a turning point, proving MO3 could stand toe-to-toe with seasoned legends and hold his own like he'd have been in the game forever.
Do you see somebody running down the street?
I do now.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, okay.
Okay. So you're saying that all that is just nonsense?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Internet be reaching.
When he dropped tracks like Everybody and those aggressive shots aimed at his rivals, it showed how versatile he really was. One moment, he'd be singing something so honest it felt like he ripped pages out of his diary. The next moment, he'd flip the switch and deliver bars sharp enough to make his enemies rethink everything. Wasn't just talented, he was dangerous in the booth. But Dallas hip-hop has a dark side where ambition mixes with neighborhood loyalty, and the wrong blend of both can turn deadly real fast. The tension between Yella Beezy and MO3 didn't come from one explosion. It was a slow burn, simmering long before it turned into tragedy. What started as simple competition spiraled into personal disrespect, street run-ins, an alleged retaliation that had fans glued to their screens while real families were dealing with pain behind the scenes. This beef wasn't born overnight. It grew from a messy mix of rumors, hidden issues, and the harsh reality that in some places, rap problems don't stay on songs, it's spill into real life. The roots stretched back to when both artists came up grinding in Oak Cliff and North Dallas, two areas full of talent but heavy with territorial pride. Street Talk claimed the first spark came from something small, like a shared romantic interest, but the truth is, outsiders played a huge role in blowing things up. That's where Roy Lee Phipps Jr. entered, a Dallas comedian known for cutting deep with online roasts, aimed at rappers' credibility and street background. Roy Lee started publicly questioning Yella Beezy's ties to Oak Cliff, claiming he was boosting his hood rep for attention, basically labeling him as someone pretending.
Now, here's the thing. I gotta believe if MO3 is in this vehicle, I gotta believe that MO3, it doesn't really feel like he's that much in danger or that this person is trying to kill him. You get what I'm saying? And the reason why I gotta believe that is that the dude passes him. MO3 could have slowed down. Let's say the guy's going 60. Reduce your speed to 30.
And in Dallas, being accused of faking your background hits harder than any diss track ever could. Roy Lee was close with MO3, so his attacks automatically pulled Mo3 into the fire, even if MO3 wasn't the one speaking. That guilt by association had both camps looking at each other sideways. Things got even uglier after Roy Lee reportedly pulled up on Yella's people at a club and got jumped. He didn't back down, though. He kept the roasts going until tragedy hit. Late 2018 or early 2019, Roy Lee was shot in the leg in North Dallas. It was the wound that took him out. It was the complications from blood clots afterward.
I'm not having a standoff in the middle of the highway. I'm keep driving. I'm flooring it, right? I'm keep flooring this bitch, okay? But Mo3 actually stops, but it appears Mo3 must have been under the assumption, oh, this pussy nigga's playing with me. Maybe recognize the guy or recognize the car. And he's like, let me go get my chopper.
When he passed away, the streets exploded with whispers. People pointed fingers at ULO or someone in his circle, claiming a bag had been dropped as revenge. Nothing was ever proven, but once those kinds of rumors start circulating, the whole atmosphere shifts. Small feuds suddenly felt like something way darker. And MO3 couldn't just ignore it. This was someone he rocked with, someone who went to war for him online. The pressure to respond grew heavy. Meanwhile, deeper elements were moving behind the scenes. Yella's ties to the Rollins 60s Crips added another layer: organized street loyalty, structure, and codes that can turn one personal issue into a full crew conflict real quick. In a city where gang politics and rap overlap, that type of connection raises the stakes instantly. Specific situations push things past the point of no return. In October 2018, Yella Beezy got caught in a shooting on the North Dallas Tollway, an ambush that left him hospitalized and the streets buzzing with theories. That moment signaled the storm was nowhere near over, it was just getting started. When people asked Mo3 about the violence tearing through Dallas, especially the shootings targeting rappers, his answer hit with a cold, almost casual acceptance of the danger. It was the type of response that made folks realize he understood the streets on a level most didn't want to even think about. Rumors floated around, linking him to the attack on Yella Beezy, with some claiming it was retaliation for Roy Lee's death, even though both sides publicly brushed those claims off like they were nothing. Then things turned even messier in February 2020 at a Dallas club, where Yella Beezy allegedly got into it with Brandon Rainwater, Mo3's manager. Reports describe the situation as a straight-up one-sided beatdown, with Rainwater walking away with a dislocated hip and later filing a lawsuit. Even in the middle of all this chaos, both rappers kept making calm public statements, acting like everything was cool while still sneaking in little shots that told a completely different story. One moment stood out heavy. Someone asked Yella Beezy directly about MO3, and his response was so dismissive, it felt louder than any diss track. Like he wanted everyone to know the tension was in as dead as he was pretending. Meanwhile, Mo3 went just as hard in the opposite direction, denying any official beef in Dallas and claiming blogs were twisting stories just to get their views up. He insisted ain't no rap beef, saying the internet was blowing everything up to make drama for clicks. But when folks pressed him harder about surveillance footage, specific incidents, and street rumors, Mo3's responses turned almost comedic in how blunt they were. Anything people brought up, he shrugged off as pure internet fantasy, made-up stories from people desperate to turn gossip into reality. That's why I'm saying the internet be reaching, he said, brushing it all aside like nothing mattered. But behind those denials and claims that everything was fabricated, something way darker was taking shape. A deadly plan calculated, cold, and already in motion was building underneath all that online noise. And before Dallas knew it, that tension would explode in the most horrifying way possible, turning a rap rivalry into a full-blown murder investigation that would grip the whole nation and take 5 years to piece together. Then came the freeway execution, the moment that changed everything. November 11th, 2020 started like any normal Dallas Wednesday. Clear skies, steady traffic, as people heading to work, grabbing lunch, trying to make money and get through their day. Around noon, MO3 was driving northbound on I-35E near the Oak Lawn exit, a stretch of highway every attentive knows is always packed with commuters, truckers, and delivery drivers. What happened next didn't just shake Dallas, it went nationwide. An 18-wheeler's dashcam caught the entire sequence, every horrifying second preserved forever. Investigators later called it a calculated hit, carried out with zero regard for witnesses or the chaos it could cause. A dark-colored car pulled up beside MO3's ride, and without a single warning, the driver unleashed gunfire. Bullets ripped through the air, smashing into MO3's vehicle, and sending him swerving as horns exploded around him and drivers panicked, trying to avoid the chaos. Traffic froze, people screamed, and the entire freeway turned into a scene out of a nightmare. In pure survival mode, MO3 tried to escape, swerving, speeding, anything to get away from the hail of bullets raining down on him. But the attack wasn't random, it wasn't sloppy. Whoever was behind that wheel was determined, focused, and fully committed to making sure MO3 didn't leave that freeway alive. MO3 jumped out of his car and sprinted across the freeway, dodging between lanes as cars screeched and swerved to avoid hitting him. People were slamming brakes, horns were blaring, and the whole highway fell into pure panic. Meanwhile, the shooter stayed calm, moving with laser focus, completely unfazed by the chaos around him. He hopped out of his own car with his weapon drawn and chased MO3 on foot right across moving traffic like it was nothing. Witnesses described a terrifying sight. The shooter dressed head to toe in black, face covered, moving steady and deliberate, tracking MO3 across several lanes before firing the shot that would end his life. MO3 collapsed on the concrete, bleeding heavily from multiple wounds as traffic came to a complete stop and the freeway transformed into a crime scene in real time.
That state's witness will also testify that Marquise Conway was one of the individuals responsible for a portion of that payment. A state's witness will also testify to the individual who would receive this payment. The state's witness will testify that Keywan White was, in fact, the individual to receive this payment, who was originally indicted in State's Exhibit Number 1.
Even though first responders rushed in fast, the damage was too severe within minutes. MO3 passed away at the hospital, ending a rising career and launching a complicated murder investigation that would drag on for 5 long years. When the dashcam footage finally surfaced in court years later, media personalities like DJ Akemix broke it down frame by frame for millions of people who wanted to understand exactly what happened. The video showed MO3 initially trying to maneuver away from the shooter in traffic, almost like he didn't fully realize how deadly the situation had become. Then came the moment that changed everything, the split second when MO3 made the fatal decision to jump out of his car. According to the footage, it looked like MO3 was trying to reach back into his vehicle to grab his tool to defend himself. Mechanics analyzed this choice, pointing out how different things might VA ended if MO3 had just kept driving instead of stopping in the middle of the highway. That one decision, that 1 second, completely flipped the outcome. When investigators processed the scene, they recovered dozens of shell casings scattered across the asphalt, proof that the shooter, unleashed a rapid burst from a high-powered semi-automatic weapon. The sheer number of casings explained the devastating injuries.
The state has also had an opportunity to review bank records of the defendant, Marquise Conway. These records would show that the defendant drew $40,000 in the days following the murder of Melvin Noble. And for the record, that was a cash withdrawal. These records would correspond to the exact amount which the state's witness would testify to.
MO3 suffered in his back and torso, injuries that told detectives he was being shot while trying desperately to run for his life. Dashcam footage from passing vehicles plus highway surveillance clips captured different angles of the event. You could see MO3's gold sedan riddled with bullet holes, the suspect's dark sedan abandoned nearby, and fragments of the chase from multiple lanes. These visuals helped investigators stitch together the timeline, every move, every shot, every moment. The shooter closed in with that cold, methodical pace, and the location made everything even more shocking. This wasn't some hidden alley or late-night setup. This was a major Dallas freeway in broad daylight, surrounded by commuters, families, and truckers. The fact that someone carried out a hit in a place like that showed how fearless or reckless the attacker was. They didn't care about witnesses, cameras, or consequences. They cared about one thing: finishing the job. But the investigation didn't stay cold for long. Once detectives dug through the footage, shell casings, and witness statements, a name surfaced: the man identified as the shooter, the person who authorities said actually pulled the trigger, Dontrell White. And once his name hit the paperwork, the entire case cracked wide open. The suspect was a 22-year-old already on parole. And once Dallas PD released surveillance images of a man at the scene who matched his description, everything started moving fast. That man was Dontrell White, someone with a history that included weapons violations and other charges. Within a month, December 2020, police scooped him up after tips from the streets, and forensic evidence tied him to both the vehicle and the weapon used in the shooting. From that moment on, his role became clear. He was painted as the alleged triggerman, the one hired to handle the dirty work for whoever wanted MO3 gone.
Saying he pulled a certain amount of money out of his
Say
bank
he pulled
account.
out 40,000 out of his account, and I'm thinking like, that's not really that uncommon for someone like a Beezy, honestly.
White originally faced murder charges, but things shifted when prosecutors offered him a plea deal on related gun charges. He agreed to serve 9 years while cooperating with the state, a decision that put serious pressure on everyone else tied to the case. His testimony would become one of the biggest tools investigators used to chase down the person they believed orchestrated the whole plan. Another name showed up early in the paperwork: Devin Brown, an alleged participant who was indicted alongside White and Yella Beezy back in 2020. Brown was accused of helping facilitate the hit, though the exact details of what he supposedly did stayed blurred, incomplete and unclear, even as the charges moved forward. But the real shockwave, the one that shook Dallas hip-hop deeper than anything, hit when investigators shifted their attention to the question everybody had been whispering since day one: who ordered the hit, who planned the whole thing? That's when Yella Beezy government named Marquise DeAndre Conway entered the case in a way nobody saw coming. Wasn't named early, he wasn't arrested immediately, but when investigators finally...
I like having cash around.
people.
Like, I'll have a few thousand cash just lying around just to have. I've pulled out 5, 10, 20,000, 40,000.
No, that's a fact.
I remember I bought a watch, I pulled out 70,000. Like, this happens when you have money in your accounts.
But guess what? You could have went and provided a receipt for the watch, right?
Put the pieces together, prosecutors hit him with capital murder for hire charges, claiming he orchestrated the entire hit as part of an ongoing feud that been burning for years. This wasn't some quick emotional move, according to investigators. This was plotted. The investigation moved slow, steady, and extremely calculated. High-profile street beef cases involving big artists are some of the hardest to crack, because the truth usually hides behind layers of fear, loyalty, silence, and survival. Dallas PD launched a full-on manhunt right after MO3's death, blasting surveillance images to the public and pulling in leads that pointed straight to White. From the jump, physical evidence was key: ballistics linking shell casings to the same gun White was tied to, surveillance clips showing timelines and witness statements that lined up with everything that happened on that tragic day. But after that initial burst of momentum, everything slowed down. The case went cold for a while. Detectives couldn't establish a clear motive tying the shooter to anyone higher up, and they couldn't lock down who might have been paying for the operation. Without that missing piece, they couldn't push forward. The motive stayed foggy, the connections were whispers, and for months, nothing solid enough surfaced. That's when street informants stepped in. Quiet conversations, anonymous tips, people who knew how things moved behind the scenes. Their information gave the case a pulse again, especially when White eventually decided to cooperate. Then the real story started forming. Allegations that a bag had been dropped, that someone wanted revenge for past situations, and that the feud between MO3 and Yella's camp had crossed the point of no return. These claims pushed the investigation forward, but they still needed proof. It took 5 full years from the murder in 2020 to the arrests in 2025 to build a case detectives believed could hold up in court. That delay came from the need to match street whispers with real evidence, sift through testimonies from cooperating witnesses with their own agendas, chase digital trails that weren't always complete, and deal with people who were scared to talk or afraid of retaliation. One of the biggest obstacles? Memories fading, witnesses switching stories, and everyone trying to protect themselves while detectives tried to uncover the truth. Witness memories began fading over time. People in the rap community kept quiet out of fear. And proving a murder for hire plot without clear confessions or a paper trail was extremely complicated. Detectives were fighting against silence, hesitation, intimidation, and the natural erosion of details as months turned into years. But prosecutors still managed to build a case, and surveillance footage became the backbone holding everything together. Highway cameras captured the movements of the vehicles in real time, while dash cams recorded the chase. An execution in brutal, unfiltered detail right as it happened in the middle of a busy interstate. But the evidence that prosecutors leaned on the heaviest wasn't a video clip. It was financial records that painted a story all by themselves, according to investigators. Bank documents showed that Yella Beezy withdrew $40,000 in cash shortly after the murder, a move prosecutors argued looked like payment for the hit. Defense attorneys pushed back hard, claiming it was completely circumstantial, nothing more than coincidence. But this detail tied directly into the now famous bank withdrawal angle, the same angle that would become one of the central pillars of the state's case. Standard bank security cameras would have recorded the transaction, and investigators later subpoenaed that footage to match the timing and the amount. None of that video has ever been released publicly, the officials stating they needed to protect the integrity of the ongoing case, but it allegedly lined up perfectly with the prosecution's timeline. Phone records added even more fuel. Investigators uncovered communication between Yella Beezy and QAnon White around the time of the murder, along with cell tower data, placing their devices unusually close to each other in the days before and after MO3's death. On paper, it looked suspicious, exactly the kind of pattern detectives look for when mapping out a murder conspiracy. But the killing on the freeway didn't appear out of nowhere. Looked like the climax of a long, messy history of violence. The rumored connection between Yella's circle and the 2019 death of Roy Lee, LLEGEDLY, retaliation for his roast, had already created tension. The club altercation where Yella allegedly beat down Brandon Rainwater created another layer of bad blood. In the October 2020 shooting targeting Yella, people whispered that MO3's side might have been involved, turning everything into a destructive tit-for-tat cycle with no breaks. By the time prosecutors started piecing these events together, the narrative forming in front of them looked like an escalating street feud spinning out of control, a feud that ended in a hit they believed was premeditated and orchestrated. As the case moved closer to trial, even though much of the evidence was circumstantial, the combination of phone records, gun forensics, surveillance footage, street testimony, and the cash withdrawal shaped a picture prosecutors were confident in. And with the rap world buzzing, fans arguing online, and Dallas watching closely, everything was leading toward one of the biggest courtroom battles the city's hip-hop scene had ever seen. Then came the official move, justice delayed, but not forgotten. In March 2025, more than 4 years after MO3 lost his life on I-35EA, Dallas County Grand Jury finally indicted Yella Beezy on capital murder for hire charges. Under Texas law, this is a first-degree felony upgraded because it involved allegations of money being paid to make the murder happen. Prosecutors claimed Conway put a bag on MO3's head and hired Dontrell White to carry out the hit as retaliation for years of growing tension. Right alongside him, Devin Brown also caught an indictment, accused of helping set the whole situation up, adding more weight to the conspiracy claim. After the indictment, the court process was anything but smooth. The trial date was originally set for April 2025, but like many high-profile homicide cases, delays came quick. Lawyers from both sides pushed motions, reviewed evidence, argued over admissibility, battled over timelines, pushing everything back again and again. The stage was being set for a courtroom showdown that Dallas and the entire hip-hop world was waiting for. Conway's trial eventually landed on February 2, 2026, while Devin Brown's trial date locked in for November 2025, dates that showed just how much legal preparation was needed for charges this heavy, charges that could send a man away for life. Pre-trial hearings stretched on for months, covering everything from bond conditions to what evidence could be used in front of a jury, all the way down to which witnesses were allowed to take the stand. The bond hearings turned into straight war zones. Prosecutors and defense attorneys clashed over whether Yella Beezy should sit behind bars until trial or be allowed to walk free while fighting the case. When Conway was first booked in March 2025, the judge hit him with a massive $2 million bond, with prosecutors arguing he had serious money, deep connections, and every reason to run with capital murder for higher charges hanging over his head. But at a crucial hearing on March 27, 2025, the judge surprised everyone by reducing the bond to $750,000 after hearing the defense break down Conway's community ties, his family responsibilities, including his kids, and the fact that despite old trouble with the law, he had no violent priors. The courtroom energy was electric, and during that same hearing, prosecutors dropped the first of several major bombs. A state attorney stood up and revealed details about their star witness, the one person they claimed could connect all the loose ends and place Conway directly in the center of the alleged murder for hire setup. The way the courtroom reacted showed how big that moment really was. This wasn't a small detail. This was the piece the state believed would lock everything together. But the biggest shocker of the day came when the prosecution laid out their financial evidence. The cornerstone of their entire argument, the smoking gun they claimed proved Conway had paid for the hit on MO3. At the heart of the state's strategy was a mountain of evidence gathered over 5 long years, and they argued it linked Conway to the murder beyond a reasonable doubt. Financial records came first. Prosecutors alleged that Conway withdrew $40,000 in cash just days after MO3 got hit, a move they claimed lined up perfectly with a payment for the job. The defense fired back that wealthy artists regularly pull out large stacks for all kinds of normal reasons. But prosecutors insisted this wasn't normal. This was suspicious, intentional, and sinister. This tied directly into the filmed bank withdrawal. Everyone online kept talking about the routine bank surveillance that investigators subpoenaed, showing Conway making that exact withdrawal. The footage has never been released publicly, but prosecutors said it confirmed the timing and amount to the minute. Then came witness testimony, especially from Q and White, who took a plea on lighter charges and agreed to talk. White claimed he had direct knowledge of conversations about a payout and that he was hired specifically by Conway's circle to take MO3 out. This testimony was expected to blow the courtroom wide open because it was just rumor. This was coming from someone who said they were actually involved. Digital communication evidence backed his story up even more. Phone records showed calls between Conway and White within 24 hours of the murder. Cell tower data placed their devices dangerously close to each other in the days surrounding the hit. To prosecutors, this was the type of pattern that painted a clear picture: coordination, communication, and planning. But Conway's legal team came out swinging. They attacked the state's version from every angle they could find. First, they hammered the 4-year delay before prosecutors even filed charges, arguing that alone showed the evidence was thin and the case was built on speculation. They smashed the financial angle too, saying it was completely circumstantial. Nothing in writing. No messages, no receipts, no contracts, nothing directly ordering a murder. Most of all, they went straight after White's credibility. They reminded the court of his long criminal background, his parole status, and the fact that his plea deal gave him every reason in the world to say whatever prosecutors wanted to hear to save himself. According to the defense, White wasn't a truth teller. He was a man trying to survive. And with both sides digging in harder and harder, this case was shaping into one of the most explosive courtroom battles Dallas had ever seen. Hip-hop insider and longtime street politics commentator Whack 100 jumped into the conversation with a deep breakdown of the case that had everybody talking. During a detailed interview, he made it clear he wasn't fully buying the prosecution's narrative, especially their attempt to use the cash withdrawal as definitive proof of a murder-for-hire setup. He said straight up that wealthy rappers pulling out large sums of cash isn't unusual at all, and acting like it automatically means someone paid for a hit was a massive stretch. Whack walked viewers through the flaws in the state's argument, explaining why the financial evidence looked flimsy and shaky when standing alone. He highlighted the real challenge prosecutors would face trying to convince a jury that one withdrawal, quote, equals a full murder conspiracy, especially in an industry where cash plays a huge role in everyday business. To Whack, the case needed a lot more than bank slips to lock in a life-ending conviction. Meanwhile, Conway eventually posted his $750,000 bond and stepped out, but not freely. He was released under strict house arrest, strapped with a GPS monitor 24/7 and hit with rules banning him from contacting witnesses or co-defendants. He was locked down tight, with every movement monitored. But by early November 2025, the judge approved a small adjustment, allowing him 5 hours a week to hit the studio and record music. His legal team argued that music wasn't just a hobby, it was his whole livelihood, his income, his way to support his kids and keep his life afloat. Cutting him off from recording, they said, would crush him financially and violate legal precedent from other big-name cases where courts allowed limited creative work during house arrest. The judge agreed, but only under heavy supervision. This entire situation mirrored other hip-hop tragedies where long-standing tensions turned deadly, leaving artists gone too soon and the streets filled with questions, pain, and unanswered stories. A feud that started over pride and disrespect eventually spiraled into a legal saga that captured Dallas, shook the hip-hop community, and became one of the most closely watched rap cases in recent years. And now the whole world is waiting to see how this story ends, whether the evidence is strong enough, whether the testimony holds up, and whether the truth finally comes to light in that courtroom. Thanks for watching this deep breakdown, the full story behind one of Dallas's most shocking rap cases. Stay locked in for more real stories, more street history, and more hip-hop investigations coming your way.